Hello, everyone. My name is H. Melt. I am the poetry coordinator at Women and Children First Bookstore, and we're excited that you are here with us tonight. I would like to begin this event by acknowledging the land on which Women and Children First sits is the occupied territory of the Peoria, Potawatomi, and Miami people. There are over 75,000 Indigenous people of many nations living in Illinois. We encourage you to research whose land you're on in your own homes and communities and support Indigenous-led organizations like Shy Nations Youth Council. Tonight, I'm thrilled to celebrate the book Thresh Hold by Marlanda Dekine, who will be joined for reading and conversation with Ashley M. Jones, author most recently of Reparations Now. We have copies of both books available for purchase through our website for either shipping or in-store pickup if you're local. You can just click that green button at the bottom of your screen and it will take you to the website. And as I was sort of discussing before we went live, Women and Children First just launched a poetry subscription program. And for the very first box, Thresh Hold is the book that I chose. I met Marlanda about a year ago at the Tin House Workshop and was mesmerized by their poetry. Thresh Hold is filled with Black queer Southern history and imagination. They trace their familial lineages. I am from people with their feet on the ground, with hints of magical realism, and they burst through ceilings, exploding into joy. I'm going to read everyone's bios, and then we will have a reading, conversation, and time for questions at the end of tonight's event. Ashley M. Jones is the Poet Laureate of the state of Alabama. She holds an MFA in poetry from Florida International University, and she is the author of Magic City Gospel, Dark Thing, and Reparations Now. Her poetry has earned several awards, including the Rona Jaffe Foundation Writers Award, the Silver Medal in the Independent Publishers Book Awards, the Lena-Miles Wever Todd Prize for Poetry, a Literature Fellowship from the Alabama State Council on the Arts, and the Lucille Clifton Poetry Prize. She was a finalist for the Ruth, Lily, and Dorothy Sargent Rosenberg Fellowship in 2020, and Reparations Now was longlisted for the 2022 PEN Award for Poetry. Her poems and essays appear in CNN, Poetry, the Oxford American, Origins Journal, Split This Rock, Obsidian, and many other places. She co-directs PEN Birmingham and is the founding director of the Magic City Poetry Festival. She teaches in the creative writing department of the Alabama School of Fine Arts and is part of the core faculty of the Converse University Low Residency MFA program. She recently served as a guest editor for Poetry Magazine. Marlanda Dekine is a poet and author obsessed with ancestry, memory, and the process of staying within one's own body. Their work leaves spells and incantations for others to follow for themselves. Dekine is the author of the self-published collection and mixtape, I Am From a Punch and a Kiss. Their poems have been published or are forthcoming in the Poetry Out Loud Anthology, Poetry Magazine, Emergence Magazine, Southern Humanities Review, Oxford American, and elsewhere. Dekine is a Tin House on Path scholar. They live in South Carolina with their wise dog, Malachi. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Ashley.
All right. Hello. First of all, I am so excited that we are celebrating this beautiful book, Thresh Hold by Marlanda Dekine. Marlanda, I have told you so many things over email and over Zoom, but I just want to say I'm so grateful for your voice on the page and in the world. You are seriously one of the most kind human beings I have ever met, and your poetry is just, it's amazing. So I am going to, in celebration of you, read a few poems in my 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes. And these poems are from my latest collection, Reparations Now. I also want to say, Marlanda, it is such an honor to be press mates with you. Like, I'm telling you, Hub City Press is doing the right stuff because you are there. So I'm going to read a few poems. I'm going to start with a poem that tells the story of America. And I think it's just so important for us to read history and comprehend the things that we have read. I think right now in our country, in our world at large, but in our country especially, there is a lack of reading for comprehension, and there is more reading to see what you want to see. And we have to stop that. So this is called Manifest Destiny. And so he learned that the land could be called a name. So he called it mine. And so he learned it could be bordered with blood. And so he called it conquest. And he learned that the land was willing to give fruit and flower. And he called it profit. And so he saw some other folk planting and praising. And he called them enemy. And so he saw there were armies to guard those flowering folk, and he called them prey. And so he saw the ocean, and what was it but a highway to make more borders? And so he saw the bright and peaceful sea, and he littered it with trade, the bodies stacked next to the crops, the textiles, and the rot of disease. And so he ground hope and God into dust and called it rights. And so he heard the wind blowing joy over its people, and he sliced it up with law. And so he kept slicing for 500 years. And so he built his things around him. And so his coffers never emptied. And so he took wives and made children. And so he gave them too a price. And so he saw each blade of grass, and he counted it as currency. And so his blood was transfused with gold. And so he built a wall around himself to keep his many riches in, the walls encased with bone, even his heart a fortress of muscle and money. Listen now, your past and future generations. Your hoarded hall will spoil where you stand. So that's that poem. And again, I just can't emphasize enough how important it is to read with comprehension. I mean, the history books tell us the things that are true, and we just have to understand them as we move forward. So the next poem that I want to read, let's see, I'm making a quick choice. I think I'm going to read a poem that was influenced by Gwendolyn Brooks. And the reason that I want to read this one instead of the other one I was going to read is because I see Marlanda as someone who understands that you have to be fed by other artists and other poets as you're making your art. So this poem was fed by Gwendolyn Brooks, who is someone we should all read. If you've never read Gwendolyn Brooks before, I urge you to do so. She is a fantastic poet. And this poem is a, yes, Chicago, there you go, Chicago icon. That's right. These are Chicago people and women and children first. She is a Chicago icon. She's an American icon. She changed the game in so many ways. I could spend an hour just talking about Gwendolyn Brooks and all that she did. But this poem uses a line from her poem, Love Note Shirley, which comes from her book, Gay Chaps at the Bar. And that book is about soldiers returning from war and trying to figure out how to fit into society again, Black soldiers. And this poem came out of a group text with some really awesome poet friends of mine. One of them is the poet Justin Philip Reed, who texted us all one day and said, "Have y'all read this poem?" And we hadn't, and we all like started discussing it in the chat. And we just were taken aback by what Brooks could do with a sonnet and with language. And so I wanted to try my hand at that kind of sonnet. And this poem talks about a man who was terrible to me. Love note, surely, with first line from Gwendolyn Brooks. Surely you stay my certain own, you stay obtuse. Surely your kisses were little poisons, gripping tight my lips, my arms, mapping their way across my unsure body. Surely this fission is a gift, a gilded parcel laced like God, scent of Mother Mary's milk breath and her virgin promise, that virginal mirror, me. Surely I was sent, and incidentally, that other she, to put you on notice. Hearts aren't toys for juggling, no, the blood too sticky to really ever disappear. Surely you know that. Surely your own beating brick withstood the blows I tried to strike with my unrelenting care. The morning opens now without your sun-blacked face. The blue jays and morning birds sing away your waste. And I'm going to end with the last part of the title poem of this book. That poem is called Reparations Now, Reparations Tomorrow, Reparations Forever. And just to quickly tell you the story of this poem, I wrote this piece kind of almost last in the process of writing this book. I'm a teacher by day, and I was preparing a lesson on the March books by John Lewis for my high school students. And I realized that they probably needed some context around what was happening in 1963, because that's the section of the book we were reading. And so I was looking through all my materials, getting things ready, and I was like, well, okay, George Wallace, let's talk about him. And I realized as I was watching the video of his inauguration speech from 1963 that I had never read the whole thing or heard the whole thing. So something told me, I would say the spirit told me, read that whole speech. So I printed it all out. I read it. It was a grueling experience to read that for comprehension. Just speaking back, to my previous comment. And as I read, as I was underlining things, I started to realize, wait a minute, I've heard all these words before, and not from George Wallace. I've heard them over and over again from politicians who are living today. And at the time I was writing this, there was a certain president in office. And I don't have to say his name, y'all know who it is, but he was there. And I just, realized, wow, a lot of the things that he says, and not just him, let me be very clear, those issues don't only exist in that one human, they are everywhere. But I heard these same sort of things from so many people. And so I wanted to write a poem showing that these words were applicable today, but also a poem pushing back on that idea. And instead of segregation, now, tomorrow, forever, it's reparations, which is the thing that people are owed when something is done wrong to them. And they can look a lot of different ways. And it's a very urgent need for us to have this repaired. So I'm going to read the last section of that poem. The previous 4 sections, some of those sections use the literal words from that speech. And this section does not. And just for context, sometimes when we talk about reparations, we talk about Black people deserving 40 acres and a mule after slavery, which I don't know if we got that. I don't think we did. But just so when you hear that phrase, you know what I'm talking about. A case for reparations. When, Governor, can we enjoy the full richness of the great American dream? My grandmother was a sharecropper. My grandfather beat his black wife and black children. My uncle was arrested for a crime he didn't commit. In America, even the shadows of black people are black enough to hide all innocence. Some nights, I dream of being killed like Emmett Till or Trayvon Martin or Sandra Bland or insert black person's name here. Some nights, I insert my name there. Is that the American dream? Governor, president, mayor, boss man, woman with a cell phone or a police badge or a bank account, and the skin tender enough to make murder legal. When will you be tired of the taste of black blood? Sometimes I'm singing a song and you make that feel like death. Sometimes I'm dancing a dance and you make that feel like shame. Sometimes I'm sitting on my porch just trying to eat a damn melon and you make that feel like I'm selling my black soul. My parents told me I could be anything, even God. That's the least I'm owed. To know I'm worth heaven, yes, but also worth a life on earth. My mother told us we were pretty enough to be dolls, pretty enough to be praised in the book of Barbie. That's the least I'm owed. A face, skin, hair, so obviously, inherently, objectively beautiful. It's frozen in plastic and sold to kids all over America to hug and love and look at with the eyes of dreams. What? You think all I want is money? What? You think money can ever repay what you stole? Give me land. Give me all the blood you ripped out of our backs, our veins. Give me every snapped neck and the noose you wove to hoist the body up. Give me the screams you silenced in so many dark and lustful rooms. Give me the songs you said were yours, but you know came out of our lips first. Give me back Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X and Medgar Evers. Give me back the beauty of my hair, the swell of my hips, the big of my lips. Give me back the whole Atlantic Ocean. Give me a never ending blue and a mule. Thank you very much. And now it is my pleasure to bring on Marlanda Dekine.
Thank you so much, Ashley. That was a beautiful reading. Of course, I have to hold up the book, and I have to say thank you to H. Melt for having me here. Have to hold up the book. And thank you to all you wonderful people out in the audience, and a sincere thank you, most immense gratitude to Women and Children First in Chicago. I'm going to be reading from my book, Thresh Hold. Very happy to be reading with you all. I'm not going to say too much before the poems. I'm just going to jump into them so that we have some time for questions. Let's go. I've marked places for me to follow, and I have a timer here so I don't get too excited and try to read you the entire book. I get very excited about reading poems. That's all I'll say about that before I talk about how excited I get about reading poems. I am bound for the kingdom after Florence Price and Marian Anderson. My granddaddy Silas was born on the Nightingale Plantation in Plantersville, South Carolina, on riverbanks that loved. 3 generations of my kin captured in a green-tinted photograph hanging in my daddy's den. Tonight, my eyes will take each old world bird from the cropped space, send them home with their songs and favorite foods. Look out for me, I'm a-comin' too. With rice, okra, hard-boiled eggs, and Lord Calvert. My daddy says if I get out of my car on Nightingale land, the folks who own it might shoot. My daddy says, never leave the driveway. Glory into my soul. I watch all of my ascendants, their faces reflecting me in that photograph. Their eyes are dead, black-eyed Susans. First Lady of the Church. I don't want to remember how she made the Reverend run, praying scriptures like spells while sitting next to peace lilies. So many times I was afraid of her searching for camphor, her tales of the plat eye and hags, burning pine needles, all while laughing at the audacity of wayward men. Grandma Thelma turned trees into so many things. She'd disappear into grapevines unbothered by snakes, return with her brown hands purple and wet. She mashed muscadines into wine like her 8 children, graduations, marriages, her own ever-widening family tree. Grandma Thelma stayed humming and telling folk how God come for we. She called my grandpa Mose because everybody knows he knew God. She knew his hands flung her face into Red Sea blues. His voice shook pews. He came for my grandmother. His hands took her tooth. Grandma Thelma told me I bit finger into. I just know when I couldn't go to school with my fever, I'd awaken safely next to the warmth of her wood stove, and she was healing me. A rose. In a dream, my daddy found his ma hanging one night inside a bedroom closet. She'd been dead 13 years. I was asleep and 9 years old. He said her mouth was a cave opening. Inside there was a choir of deacons, dressed and ready for the ritual, a trilling crescendo of sweet songs, nightingales who wanted to be filled by forgiveness singing, she rose from the dead. Grandma Lizzie cued the choir. They dragged my daddy in that last note. Every bird moaned at once, "He gonna be just like he daddy." I watched turkey vultures gather over my family's field. Why we let nothing die easily? My Black, rural, queer childhood. I have to just say really quickly, I have a hard time saying the word rural. So I want to make sure you understand I'm saying R-U-R-A-L, rural. There you go. Thank you, Ashley. My Black, rural, queer childhood. I want my body, but I don't want it to be called a body. Reminds me of when my family and I were driving through Manning, South Carolina. I was the first to see the big black sound, the buzzing in all our ears. I'd never heard of a horsefly. I just knew it was big. I screamed, and our big brown caravan stopped at a triangular median, smack dab in the middle of a small downtown road. I screamed. The horsefly buzzed and smacked itself into the wide windows of blue sky. I don't remember. I can spot a single ant on a dark surface. Maybe I've been afraid to claim my body, afraid to be wild and break out into all this sky around me. Perhaps I can burst through ceilings and glass, explode into joy. Ma. I watched my mother learn to walk again after surgeries on each knee over the course of 6 months. She kicked me out of her house because I was an unforgiving mirror. My ma loves me more than she ever learned to love herself. I witnessed her realize a monarch butterfly sat on the porch for 30 minutes of her company. When the first knee reintegrated, my ma remembered everything that ever hurt and the root, tales of surviving a tsunami, of a father and a hardened mother she loved, how she forgives them at the graveyard with tears and flowers. My ma, my love, is always teaching me. She knows pain I cannot write. I no longer hold. I go to the water. My ma, I love, my rose, my thorn. I will never leave, even when I leave. My ma is every sinew of my every muscle, everything I have ever done. My heartbeat loves her being. My ma, the fixer, and the butterflies, oh, the sweet butterflies that move us closer to our true natures. My ma would not rest, but she's learning. I'm right here, ma. I'm right here. Thresh and hold. Flooding in now, I rest so I can harvest new worlds, already net so still. Without rest, I cannot hear my grandma Lizzie and my grandma Thelma. Without rest, I cannot hear my Aunt Carolyn composing for her Lord. I cannot hear my Aunt Angie cussing angels while guiding me across memoried waters. I am learning what real power is. A year ago, I wouldn't have felt our bright red, black, green chords of spirit calling. Women in my family have dropped dead one day and the family kept right on working. I rest like I have tomorrows growing on a vine outside. I rest like a horned owl. My ancestors turned into machines by rice is booming in Georgetown, sale extravaganza. I rest beneath my grandma Lizzie's oil-dressed magnolia, painted white and green at the trunk. I risk surrender to her dark sachet. West Africa caught my granddaddy Silas by the brain. Here's a cosmos I picked from his field of grasses. Women in my family have dropped dead one day, purple gowned and waiting for us in the next. Perhaps I am a fugitive of empathy. Vigilant for so long, I am full. There are centuries of terror crawling just beneath my skin. I no longer consider anyone's noise as my noise. I care for Henrietta Lacks and all the names whispered in my ear by the live oak trees. I don't care about the father of modern gynecology honored on South Carolina's golf course capital, Memory floods when I walk on grasses because white clovers pushed honey while black penises fell upon them. I think of which bodies have saved bodies without permission, without mutuality. I think of black bodies that didn't make it off the bloody table. So I don't die at the hands of myself standing in the shoes of whiteness. I've been dancing with my spirit beneath old cedars. I've been building my imagination by visiting with feral cats. I've been burying my feet in the dirt, staring at magnolia trees and counting waves in the Atlantic, exhausted of singing in an empire's hopeful choir. I've been sitting with my grandmas in their photographs while wafting frankincense and myrrh. And I've been thinking about what Nikki Giovanni said to James Baldwin in that resurfaced interview on the language of love. If you don't understand yourself, you don't understand anybody else. Grain memory. In this poem and at this point in the book, the pronoun changes to E. E and M are gender neutral pronouns in Gullah Geechee language, and I'm a descendant of Gullah Geechee people, which means I am a descendant of Western Central Africans that were trafficked to the southeast corridor of the country, or of the United States, or of Turtle Island. Grain memory. A wishbone branch falls from my grandma Thelma's oak for me. What do you know about magic? He asked. He bends the old body down, turns the wishbone branch into a cross, places it around my neck. I am strapped at the Black River's right shoulder, remembering my grandpa Mose never wore anything but church. My purple head begins to feel cold as clergy, parched. I ask for water. He gives me water and rice, says to repeat after him. I am fly from nature, nature fly. 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 Ah, I get it. It's an affirmation, I say. And he laughs in wind ocean songs. He whispers, do not be trapped by language. He voice begins to beat my chest, cavity and rhythm, chaff threshed from grain, separating me from need. I thought I'd snapped that wishbone branch myself. No, I am fly from nature, nature fly. At dusk, gleaming marigolds gathered beneath my feet singing, we were stolen, shipped across the Atlantic. Invasive is a word I heard, stolen. Thrash, 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 and we speak in bloom. Thank you.
So I think I'm supposed to come back, but I'm still like I'm still in that last poem. I have not resurfaced. I tell you, I'm supposed to be asking you questions right now, and Marlanda, I'll be honest with you, I'm really just still in it. Like the spirit is moving through you. which is something I think I've known about you for a while. And it just is so amazing to see it and hear it. I mean, I don't know if you could see the chat while you were reading, but like we were losing our minds. Okay. Like, absolutely losing it. But let me ask a question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Seriously. Like, thank you. Yeah, and it's so true what you said. And I think it's Thresh Hold where you say you have to rest to hear your ancestors and all of that. And that is so true. And I know that we all can hear you hearing them. Like, it is so clear that you're tuned in to that channel. It's there. So the question I want to ask first is about sound. Something that I noticed just in general, reading the work, but also having heard it here and in the audio recordings in your Poetry Magazine publication, which I'm shouting out on purpose because Marlanda is like a capital P poet. So they appear in Poetry Magazine in the June 2021 issue, in print and online. I was very fortunate to be the one to get to publish these poems. Good grief. But we published them with audio as well. And I feel like I sort of know the answer to the question, but I want to hear you talk about what sound means to you as a poet. Are your poems, do you think, meant to be heard and read, or just what is your relationship to sound as you're writing these poems?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I when I'm writing poems, I'm often reading them out loud. So I can't, it's very unlikely that I guess I can write something, read it out loud after I've written it. But when I'm editing or going back to the poem or revising and thinking about what this poem wants to be, it's really fascinating how much I get tuned into the sound and what sounds off, how it's hitting the air, how it's hitting my body. And I think a lot of that is because I come out of the spoken word community. And so I come out of a space of music and hip hop. And even before spoken word, it was, hip hop and gospel music from the church that I grew up in. And so, so much of that experience is oral, that I often think of how it sounds before I'm considering what's on the page. And that kind of guides me on the page. Yeah.
Wow. That is so interesting that you hear it first before, and the meaning, I want to say something, it's hard to articulate, but like the sound and the meaning are linked, like it seems like even though you're saying, I listen to the sound, like the sound is also telling you the meaning, even if it's not telling it to you like in language, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Back to the spirit, like it's just all over you. Like I don't mean to go there, but like I can't not go there. Like I can't not. So that is so interesting. And I also want to ask, before I look in this Ask the Question feature, and I should say to those watching, if you have a question, please put it in the Ask a Question space. I think you can just click Ask a Question and type that. So please use that feature. But I'll ask one more question before I get to that Ask a Question feature. I am curious, thinking especially about the poem that you just read, which uses the pronoun E, and the spirit who's talking to you, I can't remember exactly who it is, but I'm just calling everything the spirit tonight because everything is the spirit, says, don't let language trap you. How does poetry, for you, or for anyone, but for you, how does poetry work as a liberation agent for yourself, but also for others? How do you see poetry freeing people?
Yeah. I used to think that it was a freeing or a liberatory tool because I thought you could use the poem to communicate a message, as in almost like a speech, where now I think a lot more, and the book is dedicated to imagination, the power of imagination. And so in the particular poem, Green Memory, a stick is talking. A fallen branch, a wishbone branch is talking. And so what can we imagine for ourselves? What can we imagine while caring for one another. What world can we create out of our imagination? And so I'm often thinking about, and I think that's why I love these books so much, because they take us into it's stepping into the now, it's stepping into the past, and then it's also saying there's a future that we're trying to build or to imagine ourselves into. Like, to even think about the words differently. Like, what does it mean to rest, close your eyes, and wake up in this world you've imagined? And that is what I'm hoping that this book does. And when I'm thinking about how I want to feel liberated and how I feel most liberated in my body is based on what I can imagine for myself and feel with my hands that's been imagined. There's another poem in here where there's a line that came, "You come from the stick you hold." And so when it's saying, do not be trapped by language, there's a way in which language has been used to encase people, to box us in, to push us out, to border us, to separate us. And if we're not careful, we'll use some of that same language in trying to free ourselves. So if we imagine ourselves through different language, maybe even a language that isn't legible, if we maybe stop trying to be so legible, what can we create there? And so those are the things that I think that are stirring in me, ingrained memory.
Yeah, I mean, yes. Like, it's so hard to bounce back after these answers. I'm telling you, I just want to keep listening to you. But I believe the same thing. I mean, I don't know that I've articulated it in that way. Imagining, waking up in the world we have imagined is beautifully said. And yeah, I even think about the uses of the English language too, that we did not, it's not ours, at all. But looking at, poets, Black poets who have made English become another thing, or harken back to what we have lost. I will never know what my ancestors really spoke. Maybe one day I can try. If Henry Louis Gates is out there, help me, find my people. But, I can only imagine, to use your words, what they were speaking. And I have to imagine it through this language that I have now. So the English I'm speaking in my mind is not the colonizer's English. This English is coming out of a Black mouth and a Black brain. So it's already coded in something else. And that's what I feel when I read your work too. This English, this poetry is not concerned with those colonizers over there at all. It is wrapped up in the spirit, in the South, in a free sort of identity. And that gets me to another question, because I'm trying to be good and ask you questions, not just talk and listen and have a moment. But I'm thinking now about place.
Yeah.
We are both Southern. We are both Black. There are people who sometimes ask me, how can you possibly be in the South? I've read your poetry. I know what you stand for. What are you doing there? How can you survive there? What is, you know what I'm saying? But I feel like for me, the South is not some throwaway place. My people were brought here. Okay. We didn't ask to be here. We know, but we were here. We made a life. We made a culture. Everything is born out of this place, whether people want to admit that or not. Everything comes out of here.
Yeah.
We are fighting important battles.
All from Alabama.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. But yeah, I don't want to start preaching, but there's just so much here that people I think need to realize in this country. You can't look at the South and say, "Ooh, so glad we got rid of, got out of that." No. Like, this is the breeding ground for everything, all the movements, even the Black Panthers. Let me not get on this soapbox. We're started here in Alabama. But I want to ask you, and it's clear that place matters to you and that your Southern heritage matters to you. Have you encountered people asking you those questions as well? And what do you say to that? What does the South mean to you?
Yeah, I Yes, I've been asked that question, and I think for me, the South is home. Like I didn't realize that until I spent a little bit of time overseas. And while I was overseas, a lot of the questions that I got had to do with, just why. If you could live anywhere else, why would you choose there? And for me, it was very clear. I'm trying to figure out why that was clear to me. I don't know if that was something my grandparents helped me understand, but it was very clear to me that it was it was almost safer to be with the people I know what they think, as opposed to people that think they don't, like they're not aware of what they're thinking. Where I grew up with people in my high school who had KKK cards, like actual membership cards. Now
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
What?
I'm 35. And I'm
31. How is 4 years separating me from a KKK card?
Yeah. We were in class making some jokes back and forth, and it got a little too deep. And and we're friends to this day. But he pulls out the KKK card, and we all, it was a majority Black school, and so all of a sudden it got very serious.
He
and we were
pulled
like,
out his KKK card.
Yeah,
in a majority Black school.
Yes, it was a Christian organization, right? And so for me, when I think about that memory in particular, and when I say let me be clear, I haven't talked to this gentleman in some time. When I say friends, if I pass them in the street, we smile at each other because we went to all the same classes together for like 8 years, right? So there's this way, I know what he thinks. Right. At least I know. Right. When I'm up in New York, or when I'm, if I go somewhere else, Boston, you think it's it's different. It's hidden. It's secretive and covert, except because we know from the South, what's going on. It's just, you don't have the big flag. I've said to people, and people get upset with me about this because they're tired of seeing these flags. I'm like, listen, if someone wants to announce to me who they are so that I can know, thank you. I know, because I wear things too. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
And so it's not that I'm saying, yes, wave your Confederate flag. That's not my argument. But the South is my home. It's somewhere that I'm deeply rooted, and I didn't realize that until I left. It wasn't until I was away and realized how people thought it was very strange that I was living there, that when I came back and I'm paying attention to the water, the landscapes, the objects that I can hold in my hands, that people that are my ancestors, my direct ancestors, touched over centuries. And then also going into the Rice Museum and touching objects that individuals who were trafficked here held in their hands. There's something very powerful about that. The South is, and I can't take this. Sarah McKeeba Days says the South is a portal. And so when we think about it that way, when you think everything came from the South, everything's blamed on the South, there's this very intense, we're living right in the pot of it. And as a poet, I got to be honest, that excites me. That tension excites me. And I think it gives us a lot of working room. I don't think, I can't imagine what people that were, 200 years before me went through where I live now. At the same time, I try my best not to romanticize other places because I know better. And I know better because I come from grandparents that taught me better than that. And that's what I try to honor in the book while thinking about the South, is who were these people that filled me up with truths before someone else tried to tell me who I was, and starting from there.
Yeah, I tell you, you just need to record all this, put it in an audiobook. I was saying in the chat earlier, let's work on that audiobook for this book, but also like a video book so we can watch you read it. Like, that's what I mean.
I'm game for it. Let's get on Hub City. I'm game for it.
Yes, if you do it, I'll do it.
All right.
Which is, as soon as I said it, I thought, well, okay, it might actually happen. That's what I said. I want it to happen for you for sure. You got it. I'll try to rise to the occasion.
Serena.
Zarina, you just started writing a poem. That's how you know it's a powerful night. Oh, there's another question in the chat from Women and Children First. Perhaps H Melt. Thank you, H Melt, for this question. And I also just want to say, I know we're getting close to our time, so I'm aware, but I will ask this question. Continuing the conversation about place and the South as home, what does Southern literature mean to you? Who or what's in your canon of Southern literature? Where does Southern literature take you? Where do you want it to go? That's all you, Marlanda.
Yeah, yeah. This is a great question, H. Melt. So, like, Southern literature is it's complicated for me because there's some Southern literature that I go to that just doesn't touch me at all. But in the canon that's important to me, Nikki Finney, Jericho Brown, Sonia Sanchez, Etheridge Knight, Tyree Day, Ashley Jones. Like, there are living poets that I know, like I have a living canon that I dig into. Also, Gabrielle Cavacaresi. Oh man, there's so many wonderful Southern poets. C.T. Salazar. And the literature, when I'm listening to their work, I get to, not only do I get to be in fellowship with this writer while spending time with the work, because I don't know all of these people. I feel like I'm coming out with a book, during a time where I didn't get to meet a lot of writers. So I I feel like I'm meeting people through their dead, through the people that matter to them. I'm meeting people through other Southern poets that they identify, especially you, H. Melt, in your work, there are people, not Southern writers, but there are people that you're calling on in your work that you're writing poems after. And so there's a way in which I can trace that lineage by starting with, if I start with Tyree Day, I'm going to end up at Jericho Brown or Nabila Lovelace. These are, I'm now leaving, but there's a way in which we're building a constellation that kind of, it goes up, comes back down. And I love that it is always, okay, great. I had it right. All right. So I always am like, I remember I made a call to someone. There was a poet I called and I said, I'm just realizing that each corner of the state, of the country, kind of has its own sound. Like they're their own sounds in these different, and that was something that I'd never paid attention to. And so there's a way in which I'm hearing poems differently because I can hear the music of a Southern poem. It's like listening to the blues or listening to gospel. And I'm talking about the old gospel, like my grandparents used to listen to, like the Sensational Nightingales and, what's it? Lee Williams, that's a little bit newer, the spirituals, like different hymns that I feel like that are called to. And then there's the storytelling that I think is a Southern, it's not just a Southern thing, but when I think about the time I've spent with family just listening to stories, they are a part of my canon. That's why you hear so much about family, because I can't really talk about place without putting my people in it, because the place is the people. And that's a very Southern thing, I think. I feel like maybe if I talk to I don't know everybody around the whole nation, and I haven't traveled as much as I plan to. But that's what I've been noticing, is that I get to meet people in their work, and I get to touch what they touch and see what they see and taste what they taste. And I love that about Southern literature.
Wow. So yeah, when you're ready to teach that course on Southern literature, Marlanda, I will be ready
Appreciate
to take
that.
it.
It means a lot coming from you. Thank you, Ashley.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, well, I am going to take a nod from Serena. Serena is hilarious. Serena Frey, everyone. Fantastic writer. Yeah, I think maybe we are near our time. H. Melt, tell me something, please? Not that we're not enjoying ourselves.
Time for one more question I see in the chat. Come on, don't all bombard us at once. It's so overwhelming.
Right. I want to yield my question to someone in the audience. If anybody has one, give us a question. If not, I will have one of my own, but I'd rather for everyone to. Or Marlanda, if you want to ask a question, perhaps we should give you the opportunity to ask something of yourself or of me, whatever you want.
Oh, wow. My brain's in a different space. What brings you joy when you are working on a project, Ashley?
That is a difficult question.
Oh, and I wasn't trying to pose it. I'm sorry. That's not what I was trying to do.
What do you mean?
Like, yeah, I don't want to. Yeah, I wasn't trying to pose a difficult question.
Well, it's not. It's difficult because the answer seems so ridiculous. Like the project is usually the thing that is bringing me joy. I mean, I guess I should step all the way back and say when I'm writing anything, I'm not like so enveloped in the work. Like the work is my life and my life is the work. So even if I'm not writing the thing, like this book I'm writing right now, I'm writing it right now, of essays about Black women poets. I've been beating myself up about not getting the literal words down on the page. So I haven't had time. And I'm working with myself on overbooking, overcommitting. I'm working with myself. But I've tried to start realizing, okay, Ashley, you are working, even if it's not showing up on the page.
Facts.
Everything you're doing has to feed the thing that you're writing. And that's always been true for me. Every book of poetry I've written, I didn't like hold myself up and write for like 3 weeks straight. I was living and writing and letting the poems come to me. I was listening to the spirit. And maybe with this book of essays, I just haven't listened closely enough yet. You know, maybe my world is so clouded with things and I need to just, like you said, rest and listen and let the work come. But that is the joy for me. It's that discovery process because it's a constant self-discovery. Writers, I think, have the secret, you know, perhaps to life. We're not always like happy 24/7, but we are always reassessing ourselves. And I think if everyone, namely our politicians, who I'm very upset with in general, but in specific here in Alabama, we have a terrible, terrible law on the books. And I don't know how we're going to get it out of there, but we're going to try. I want them to take that time to assess themselves more. What is within you that wants to control people, that wants to eliminate or erase people? What is inside of you that has that desire? Because probably it means you want to erase yourself as well. And you need to work on that. And writing can help you discover those things. There are so many things. And you know, as a writer too, sometimes you write something down and you're like, wait, did I say that about me? Like, who am I talking to right now? Who's talking to me right now? You know, but that's a joyful process, you know, to even be uncomfortable can bring joy because it means you're growing. It means you're discovering something new. So that's my answer.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, that is beautiful. I agree with everything you just said. Yeah, I think when I think about what brings me joy when I'm working on something, the joy. There's a song called "The Joy Is in the Work." I think it's by Jiminelle, I think, or Beautiful Chorus, one of the two. But music, listening to music, and keeping, you know, really positive people around, and then getting outside with the dog. But I think if I realize I'm not doing those things, it takes me somewhere very far away because the work that I'm often working on is not easy kind of stuff. Not that I don't think anything that any writer's working on is easy. We're usually working through our own stuff, like you just said, right? And peeling back layers. And so when I think about H. Melt's question too, I'm just really happy that we have a canon that are people that we can look at, even if it's our own canon that we are turning to, that that is feeding us, because I feel like there's something very powerful with that input, output, like constantly letting our bodies take it in, take that poetry in. Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you. H Melt will appear. There they are.
Hi, H Melt.
Hello. Thank you, you joyous poets. Please get Reparations Now and Thresh Hold. These incredible poetry books from Hub City Press, an amazing, amazing press and bookstore based in the South. It's been amazing to hear you all read your poems out loud, and to be present for this conversation. Thank you both so much. We hope that you make it to Chicago sometime soon. And thanks everyone for being here.
Bye, y'all.
Good night, everyone.